Welcome and thank you everyone for attending GrowSafe's Accelerating Efficiency Together webinar series. I'm Danielle Starr. I'm GrowSafe's Marketing and Communications Manager. Today with me, I have John Genho from Neogen and Mark Nelson, GrowSafe's Director of Industry Relations. Together, they're going to be discussing multi-breed efficiency EPDs and the GrowSafe network. Now, with each week, please continue to register for each webinar so you can join us live. And if you're unable to join us live, you'll be able to watch on demand. Everyone who registers for each webinar will receive an email after the call with a link to live recording. Each session is going to consist of 20 minutes of presentations, and then we're going to have 10 minutes of questions. You'll see there's a question and answer icon on your screen. So please click that icon and type in any questions throughout the presentation. As long as you ask those questions with your name, we'll be able to get you any of those answers that we're not able to get to during our live question answer session. Also, throughout our webinar, we're going to have some polling questions. We invite you to engage in those polling questions throughout the webinar, and we'll be able to share with you live results. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mark, and we're going to get started today.
Okay, thank you, Danielle. Welcome, everyone. We're thrilled to be able to do this webinar today. The topic is multi-breed efficiency EPDs and the GrowSafe network. And these two things are just so important to what we do. And it's just a real core group of clients that feed into this and build this data. So Danielle, if you click the next slide, please. So the agenda today, sorry, I got one step ahead of you, Danielle. The agenda is, first we're going to talk some about the GrowSafe network, and I'll cover that topic. Then I'll turn it over to John Genho, and he'll discuss multi-breed EPDs. And then he'll flip it back to me, and we'll discuss how you as a viewer to this webinar can get access to and utilize the network and EPDs. And then we'll follow up with questions. So next slide then, Danielle. So what is the GrowSafe network? We talk a lot about the network within GrowSafe, and the definition of the GrowSafe network is it's a forward-thinking group of GrowSafe clients who efficiency test cattle on GrowSafe technology and voluntarily contribute standardized data and pedigree into a genetic evaluation. And you know, that's kind of a wordy definition, but there's so much key in that definition. And we couldn't be where we're at today without this core group of GrowSafe clients who are forward thinking and who are testing for efficiency and then matching that with pedigree and letting us run EPDs, which John will talk more about. All of the data from this is coming from GrowSafe technology. And this is a voluntary activity. We have a lot of clients that use GrowSafe technology in a different way. So this is something that if you were to put in a system, it isn't a requirement you do, but we think it drives much value. It's something that you'll want to do. And then the other thing is that it's standardized data, so that GrowSafe is running the data sets so that everything makes sense and everything lines up, and we're not trying to compare apples to oranges. So the network membership right now, it's right at 20 locations spread across 5 countries. There's right at 250,000 cattle in the database, over 23 breeds. And the nice thing is this number is growing monthly. This is something that we've really started working hard on within GrowSafe the last couple of years, and really getting a lot of traction in the country, and a lot of people are being drawn to the EPDs. That's a lot of the reasons we chose on our webinars to make this one of our key topics. Next slide, please, Danielle. So if you were to become part of the network, the participation looks like this. Number one, you would have intake data collected from a GrowSafe system. Number two, you would enroll in the efficiency package. I mentioned a minute ago that we have 2 other packages which you can enroll in: remote assist, and also the behavior package, which more of the researchers use. The efficiency package is what people that are collecting RFI data and contributing pedigrees to opt into. And then thirdly, your tests that would go into this database, they would need to meet standardized RFI requirements. And basically, they would just have to meet the number of days for testing. So if you have a GrowSafe beef, it's 49 days of average daily gain. Or if you have just the feed intake nodes, it's 70 days gain, using shoot weights to explain the gain parameters. And then within that, you'd have to have a minimum of 35 good days of dry matter intake. So there are 3 different processes. Oh, and I apologize. So on the registration number and the pedigree would need to be provided also, so that we can obviously run EPDs on those animals. So there's 3 different processes you can use to submit pedigree currently. Number 1, which is kind of the traditional method that everybody's done to date, is when you complete a trial, you complete a spreadsheet that gives the 3 generation pedigrees of those animals and then submit that to our analytics department. We also have a process by which we have agreements with breed associations where we would basically share the entire phenotypic intake data into a database, and then that breed association would contribute their pedigree into that database. And then we're running EPDs on not just the test cattle and their 3 generation pedigrees, we're running EPDs across a breed's entire herd book. So that's an arrangement that we can do also. And then we've also just initiated kind of a middle ground way where you can contribute pedigrees right now, where a client that's testing for RFI can basically sign off to release their data directly to the breed association as they come off trial. And then that breed association would agree to supply back the 3 generation pedigree on those particular animals. So that's a way for breed associations to get third-party clean data every time on a timely basis. And it also helps our producers where they don't have to type out 3 generation pedigrees every time. So if that option fits any of you, we'd be glad to visit with you about that also. Next slide, please, Danielle. So what types of network members do we have? Right now, within those 20 producers, 10 of those are seed stock producers. 5 of those are custom test locations. And 5 of them do both. They're a combination of both testing their own seed stock as well as being a custom test location. Next slide, Danielle.
Mark, would you like to do a polling question right here?
Oh, yes, I would. Thank you. Okay, so this is the interactive part of our webinar. So I believe you can all see it on your screen. Question 1, are you currently using any efficiency EPDs? Could be RFI, RADG, dry matter intake, when choosing new genetics for your herd. If you would click yes or no, then we'll share those results with you.
We still have a few more people voting. I'll give it a couple more seconds before we close the poll.
Okay, excellent. So 73% are using some selection criteria using efficiency EPDs. That's great. 27% are not. So hopefully our presentation today will draw some of that 27% into being able to participate as well. Okay, Danielle, you want next slide, please? Okay, at this point, I'll turn over the presentation to John Genho, and he'll discuss multi-breed efficiency EPDs.
All right, thank you, Mark. So I'll talk a little bit about the multi-breed efficiency EPDs that we're running for GrowSafe. So we could go on to the next slide, Danielle. So right now we run 2 traits in the GrowSafe genetic evaluation. We run an EPD for residual feed intake and an EPD for average daily gain. Residual feed intake, as we've looked through the data set, has a heritability of about 33%. We run this without a correlation to any other traits. And the results are displayed just like the RFI phenotypes are displayed, meaning lower RFI is better, a lower RFI EPD is better. And if there are any questions about RFI or how to read those, there was a presentation last week that talked about the definitions of different traits, so you can refer back to that. Average daily gain is the other EPD we run. The heritability for this is lower, would be right about 19%. That average daily gain is only measured over the feeding period that residual feed intake is collected. So that's not weaning weight to yearling weight, that is the period of the test. That average daily gain is paired with the residual feed intake phenotype. And we adjust the average daily gain for the mid-weight and also run dry matter intake as a correlated trait there. You can go to the next slide. Just to review the size of the database, we have over 40,000 individual feeding records from GrowSafe customers who've opted to have this their data included in this analysis. So this would be individual RFI and average daily gain records. Behind those animals, we have over 240,000 animals in a pedigree that we're analyzing. And just to give you a sense of the size of the contemporary groups, we have 2,200 contemporary groups. An average number of animals in the group is over 18 head. And for me, I run genetic evaluations for some associations and for some commercial producers, and 18 animals in a contemporary group on average is pretty decent. It makes me pretty happy as a geneticist. Of course, we run into problems with individual animal contemporary groups, just like all evaluations do, but I'm pretty happy with that number. Can we go to the next slide? So to give you a sense of how contemporary groups are formed, we form contemporary groups by the test location. So the GrowSafe customer that has the test equipment, the test dates, the pen, the sex, and then the herd of origin. And so if Mark and I both have bulls and we send them to a test station and they're fed in the same pen, our bulls go into separate contemporary groups because they came from two different operations. So I think that's an important point. We're not reforming groups to put animals from different locations into a single contemporary group. Can we go to the next slide? So to give you a sense of the breeds that are represented, we have about 50% of the animals with, and these are the animals with records, about 50% of the animals with records are Angus, 14% are Hereford, and you can read on down through the list of other breeds that we have represented. We have some that are would be a composite commercial type of animal that don't necessarily have a breed well defined. So I think we have a pretty good mix of breeds. If you took the Nelore out of that percentage, then I think that would be pretty representative of sort of the northern and Midwest cow herds that you would typically find in the country. We can go to the next slide. So the question is, how do we account for those breed differences? And that's what this next slide is about, Daniel. So this is just a simple sort of statistical model that what we set up is we set up RFI. That we say that the variation in RFI is due to group average and breeding value of individual animals and breed and error. And so this is just a simple linear model that we fit that accounts for breed in our equations. Our goal is not to necessarily find the breed effect. What we're really trying to do is we're trying to predict individual animal performance. We're really trying to find that breeding value. One of the things that this type of model has issues with, as many of you on the call would know who've done this, is when you have breed and contemporary group confounded. And what I mean by that is if all Angus animals are in one group and all Simmental animals are not in another group, another contemporary group, you can see that you have two of those variables there on the screen that are confounded with each other, and you can't pick apart what's due to group average and what's due to the breed percentage. Luckily, we have enough groups that have multiple breeds represented in a single contemporary group, that this isn't an issue for us. And so you were able to work around that. And go to the next slide. So the real question is, do efficiency EPDs work? What we did is we looked back at, we've been running these EPDs now for several years, and so we looked back at the EPDs that we ran in 2018, and we took some of the sires from those sets of EPDs, and we compared their EPDs in 2018 with the average of their progeny that were collected in 19. And so if you look on the chart here, on the y-axis, up and down on the side, we have the average, or the sire RFI EPDs, and then we have the average of the average RFIs of their progeny. And I was very happy with this. The R squared here is 55%. That's about a 75% correlation. So the answer is, do they work? Can we predict, will a bull's EPDs predict how his progeny will perform? The answer is absolutely yes. They do a good job. These EPDs do a good job of predicting how a bull's progeny will perform. And go to the next slide. Just one more data set. I pulled a data set from a group of bulls that finished on their test last month. And what I plotted here is I plotted on the x-axis their RFI phenotypes, and on the y-axis their RFI EPDs. And you can see the R squared there is about 56. And so you can see that they're close, but not identical. And so Danielle, could we do a polling question? I wanted to get everyone's input to see if you had to select these bulls, would you select the bulls based on their RFI phenotypes or their RFI EPDs? You can select whichever you would like.
Give us just a couple more seconds here. All right, we're going to close the poll.
All right, great. So we had 83% had confidence in the EPDs, and we have 17% we're still working to convince that the EPDs are better than the phenotypes. The reason why you would select on the RFI EPDs is they have all of the information from the phenotypes included, but they've also included all of the pedigree information, and they have information on phenotypes on related animals included. And so the RFI EPDs have everything that the phenotypes have plus some. And so you make a better selection decision selecting on the RFI EPDs. You can go to the next slide. So I'll turn it back to Mark now to talk about the mechanics of getting EPDs back.
Okay, thank you, John. So I guess this slide explains a little bit how John and I work together, or how GrowSafe and Neogen work together more appropriately. So all data is submitted to and maintained by GrowSafe. Then Neogen does a weekly data transmission and EPD run. And then GrowSafe gets the results back from Neogen, and then we distribute to individual breeders. And I'm pleased to announce that sometime in the next couple of months, we'll have a network database for our network clients, as well as any of you that might become network clients, where you can access the entire database and search for EPDs, through the, well, currently about 250,000 cattle, which is growing every day. And that'll be something that's more accessible to you at your fingertips. So something we're looking forward to. Next slide, please, Danielle. And then if you would, we've got a polling question. So this is the third question. Have you viewed a copy of the GrowSafe Top Proven Bulls, which we published on behalf of the network on growsafe.com? Just simple, if you've seen it, yes, or if you have not, no, please. Okay, so of everybody watching, 36% of you have seen the list. 64% have not. So that is great news for 64% of you, because you're up for some really great information when you log on and look at that. And that's the slide that we have right now basically shows you how you can see that list. You basically go to our website, growsafe.com. And if you look at the screen as far as how you access that, you would click then on breeding values, and that'll come up with it's not necessarily the most efficient bulls, but it's a list of 155 bulls that are actually made the list. It says 150, but there's actually 155 on the list. And it lists all of the bulls that have the highest accuracy within our database. So within that entire database, there's 155 animals that had a 0.6 accuracy or higher. That's what it took for those cattle to be included in this published list. Like I say, it isn't necessarily the most efficient bulls, but it's the most proven bulls, the highest accuracy bulls. So within that list, when you click on that and look, you'll see that we've published the RFI and the average daily gain EPDs, both on those bulls. Because as we all know that efficiency is highly desirable to select for, but you never want to single trait select. And RFI is best utilized when it's paired with average daily gain. So you can not just see what the efficiency of the gain is, but if they're efficient and they gain both. So it's always good to pair efficiency with another trait. And for what we do, we measure intake and we measure performance. So it's just natural if that's the pair that we would present to you. So it's also nice to note at this time that RFI can be selected for with no adverse effect on other traits. And it is one of the most valuable traits to select for profitability. So how can you, as a viewer to this webinar, if you're not already a member of the network, how can you access our data, and how can you utilize the data and the power of the network and to help you at home? Number one, the list that we just looked at, you can utilize the top proven sire list to look at your own herd and your own genetics and see where you might be able to make some improvements for efficiency. We're really proud of that list and really proud of our network suppliers for being willing to share this with you. We really think it's going to be revolutionary for the industry to start accessing the power of this efficiency data. So number one is you'd use that proven sire list. Number two is you can purchase efficiency test genetics. Any one of our clients that has a GrowSafe system, many of those, in particular in the network, they also have bull sales. For example, tomorrow, McDonald Angus has a bull sale that you can search the internet and find. But we have probably 40 different clients that have bull sales. So just search for producers that test for GrowSafe efficiency, and they have sales every year. And also many of those have semen that you can purchase as well. So purchasing efficiency tested genetics would be core information and process for you to move your herd forward. And thirdly, you can test your own cattle. And there's two different options you can do. You can install your own system, which if you had an interest in doing that, we'd be glad to visit with you. To get started on that, just go to the GrowSafe website and click for information and type in that you would have an interest in looking at a system, and one of the commercial team would get with you and probably within a day or so and visit about those opportunities. And thirdly, you can also custom test. So we have, I think I mentioned that 10 of our clients are willing to custom test for you as well. And once again, just get with us on growsafe.com, and we can pair you up with somebody in your area or pair you up with somebody that might meet your needs, so you can custom test your genetics as well. So that is how you can participate within the GrowSafe network and the system that we have. With that, Danielle, would you click to the next slide, please? So in quick summary, so basically what we've covered today is the GrowSafe network and who it is and how it works, how the multi-breed efficiency EPDs are, the data is collected and it runs through our system, and those EPDs then are accessible. And thirdly, we talked about efficiency testing and selection options. So if any of those three topics, if any of you had any questions and we didn't adequately cover those, obviously we'd be glad to visit with you anytime. But we also have a time right now for questions. So if you want to slide to the next one, Danielle. So questions. I believe you have the opportunity to type in questions now if you have any.
Certainly, yep. So there's an icon on your screen. Please feel free to submit any questions right now. If we're unable to get to everyone's questions, we will follow up with you after the webinar. So if you can submit those with your name, we'll be able to get back with you. Also, if after the webinar you have any further questions, you can submit those to info@growsafe.com. So with that, I'm going to get started with questions for you, John and Mark. So we had a few come in already. How do GrowSafe EPDs correlate with various breed association EPDs for DMI, RFI, REDG, etc.?
Okay, I can take that one. So the GrowSafe EPDs, whenever you look at efficiency traits, they're going to correlate from database to database depending on the amount of data that they have in common. So when you look at the different breed associations, first of all, they would need to have the same traits, EPD traits that GrowSafe has. So for example, you can't compare RFI straight across to RADG, but you can compare DMI to DMI. And that does correlate fairly highly if the same producers are turning data into both entities. But if you start looking at the different databases around the country, you know, there's always some people that participate in one and not the other. I think the key takeaway is that as more and more people test for efficiency and we get a wider and wider volume of data, they're going to start correlating very closely. Right now, I think that you can probably see some differences from one database to another, but when you start looking at it, the ranking is usually very similar. You know, you're going to draw some takeaways from looking at one and assuming you'll find it in the other, but until there's enough data, that isn't always true.
Okay, we're going to go to another question now. If you evaluate or calculate an EPD for a multi-breed composition, how are the linkages created between the breeds to support this evaluation?
Okay. John, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I can answer that question. So yeah, so what this depends on is it depends on having multiple breeds represented in at least some contemporary groups. And so we're lucky in that we do have contemporary groups that breeders have set up that have multiple breeds represented in their contemporary groups. You know, as a geneticist, I'd always like to have more, of course, but we have to recognize this is field data we're analyzing. It's real data. It's not a designed experiment, and so you know, we're taking the data we have and fitting it the best way that we can. But we do have enough contemporary groups with multiple breeds represented to be able to calculate those breed differences.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask another question now. If we have more selection pressure, if more selection pressure is put on the EPD, is there more of a percentage of animals that will be outliers due to pedigree information or limited data other than phenotype?
More of an EPD question, John. So you want to take that one?
Yeah. So I'm not sure I understand the question completely. We may have to catch up more, but there is as we put selection pressure on the EPDs, we would over time. This is an EPD question, but over time, I guess you would expect to see a drop in variation. We haven't really observed that in generations of selecting for things like milk yield and dairy cows, and there's still plenty of variation to select for, and they still follow nice normal distributions. And so so I think this is something to watch for, but I think it's not an issue. We can work around it in the models.
One more question. Are there any comparisons across breeds, for example, Angus versus Hereford?
So, Danielle, could you go ahead, John?
So we do, this goes back to that slide of where I had the breeding value of individual animals and the breed effects. We actually calculate the breed differences, but that's not something we're focused on necessarily comparing between breeds. What we're trying to do is get at individual animal performance. I'm sure there are some studies that have compared different, different breeds, as far as efficiency goes, but as far as this data set goes, that's not our goal. Our goal is producing individual animal predictions.
Yeah, and I might add in too, the nice thing is within any breed, we're finding some animals that are extremely efficient and also gain extremely well. And the bottom end is also true, where you can find cattle that don't do so well in every breed. But the nice thing is within every breed, you can find highly efficient cattle that gain well as find cattle that are low RFI that meet the other traits you're looking for. So we are a multi-breed database, so we're less worried about comparing which breed is the best. We're more into looking for which animals within the database, within your breed, meet your needs.
Okay, so we're going to have our last question here. Like I said, all other questions we will get to via email. How much does the accuracy of RFI EPDs improve if we incorporate genomic testing?
John, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I'll take that one. So in general, if you have a bull that's tested coming off of tests, and so he has phenotypes, his accuracy is going to be about say 25 to 30%. If we were able to include genomics in this analysis, which right now this analysis does not have genomics, if we're able to include genomics in the analysis, I would expect that it would jump to about 35 to 40%, maybe a bit higher. The real opportunity with genomics is on young animals. It's a calf that's just been born who has an accuracy that's solely relying on his sire and dam's average. And if that accuracy is say 10%, he's going to jump to 25 percentage points, to 25% accuracy or so. And so the real opportunity is not necessarily on tested cattle. The opportunity is on younger pre-tested cattle, being able to use the information you have from the test to make decisions at that point.
Great, thank you. And once again, we'll get to everyone's questions after the webinar. If you think of any additional questions, or if you're watching this webinar on demand, please submit any questions to info@growsafe.com. Once again, thank you, John, and thank you, Mark. And thank you everyone for joining our webinar. Please continue to register for each webinar so you can watch on demand if you're not able to attend our webinars live. We look forward to next Tuesday, where we're going to be discussing the importance of data and planning for a 49-day RFI trial with Kevin Garasino. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday.